Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Hybrid Unlimited. This is your host, Steffi Cohen, and today
Co-host.
with me we have
Hayden Bow, trying to squeeze me out there.
Hayden Bow. Hello, Hayden.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thank you.
And me, Ian
Thank
Kaplan,
you.
holding the applause for later. I'll get a standing ovation when we're done.
Yeah. This podcast today is brought to you by Hybrid Performance Method.
Hey, everything we do is sponsored by everything we do.
Yeah, that's right, my babies.
So thank you, us.
Yeah, so if you're looking for training programs, we got you covered. If you're looking for nutrition coaching, we got you covered. If you're looking for the sickest apparel in the game, we got you covered. If you're looking for a dope gym in Miami, we got you covered.
Hey, speaking of apparel,
Yeah,
Cyber Monday, Black Friday,
yeah,
big days.
big days.
Big days. That was, we brought back everybody's 4 favorite designs. Arnold, Vader, the comic book, and the Metallica design. Nailed it. I thought for sure I was going to forget the Metallica one because I always forget it. But yeah, that was great. Those were awesome. They sold super fast. Super pumped. Thanks to everybody who bought a shirt. Thank you. What else is new? What are we doing?
What else is new? I don't think there's anything new for this week.
We move into our new warehouse this
We're
month.
moving into the new warehouse. We'll have a legit podcast studio, huge upgrades, legit filming studio. We're gonna do our own printing, so we can release more limited quantity t-shirts, more cool stuff.
Yeah, like one-off, limited runs,
Yeah,
all that good stuff. We're going to be your fitness hype beast
yeah, that's the
brand
goal.
in no time.
That's the goal. I mean, we're already doing that. We're pretty hype beastie.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. We're just taking it to the next level now.
We're the off-white of fitness.
Oh, I like that.
We're the on black. No, that doesn't make any sense. I just wanted to say something similar but different. Yeah. Right.
Oh man, somebody take that soundboard away from her. She's getting carried away. In other news, I just got to listen to half of Ian's second podcast with the Muscle Doc on RX Radio.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I feel
How'd you like
smarter
that?
already.
that's the goal.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. If you guys haven't listened to that, definitely check him out. Today, speaking of Ian and nerdy topics, we wanted to talk about the importance of technique. How important is it?
Is it a fad?
Is it a fad? Is it the next CBD?
Is it the next snake oil?
What's the gray area? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I think we wanted to have a conversation about technique and biomechanics and how those things influence pain and movement, because it is time for the world to know the truth. Over the last few years, and I would say for the majority of the last few years, I think that we've been having the wrong conversation and the wrong information's been getting out there as far as how important technique is, when is technique important, and what are the things that we need to pay attention to. So I think that the misconception that biomechanics and technique highly influence pain is highly misguided. And it's time for us to change the narrative. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so let's set the scene.
All right.
What does the industry look like? We have the technique evangelists, right?
like that.
Who espouse good technique over everything, right? Who teach technique seminars, who coach technique over the internet, who run out into the middle of the gym and interrupt people who are lifting with bad technique.
Oh, those guys are the worst.
And they enlist an army of technique aficionados who then employ their certification to then take it upon themselves to police technique in every gym,
Yeah.
in every corner of the gym around the world.
Do we have one of those here?
No, I don't think so.
We weeded them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, not allowed.
Eventually, they overstay their welcome.
I think that's part of the when the terms and conditions when you sign up for hybrid gym.
Do you care way too much about technique?
If the answer
check
is
yes,
yes, then you're not allowed. Yeah.
And we can make fun of it, but we understand now that there's a reaction to that. I mean, that might be inside baseball for therapists, because I think the dominant paradigm is still technique is everything. If there's something wrong, technique is the solution, right? If someone doesn't move or doesn't look a certain way or doesn't move a certain way, they're a ticking time bomb. You need to change everything about them. You need to cut their femurs in half, and you need to, give them some sort of assistance to make sure that they never make a mistake again, right? And every time they make a mistake, you're rolling the dice. You're playing Russian roulette with your deadlifts.
Are you speaking about technique on the baseball field or in the gym, or both?
Both. Anything.
Yeah.
Do you ever see them?
I think that's another thing. People fail to make the distinction between things that are very dissimilar. If one technique is good for one thing, it must be good for everything. If there's a risky technique in one thing, it must be risky for everything. So it's just a failure to make it, a distinction and a difference. But then you have the other side of the argument, which most people aren't exposed to, which is what we want to talk about too, and we want to try to reconcile those things. So the other side of the argument is none of it matters. There's no God. There's there's no truth. It's all subjective, right? It's Dostoevsky of training. There's nothing is real. It's all in the mind of the individual trainee. So we don't really know anything.
I think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, we can say that. But the point is, those people, many people have not been exposed to those people, but they have a point to be made, which is that we don't really know what those relationships are when we start asking those questions.
Right.
Right? Can we identify bad technique? Can we modify? How much can we actually modify technique? Do we know that what we think of as bad technique, which is undefinable to begin with, actually reliably predicts injury? If we then modify technique, assuming we can, does that change the risk of injury? Those are a lot of questions that need to be answered that actually have never been reliably answered, because they all present their own, logical holes. Only when your logic is incomplete, it's like, I know this position seems to be more stressful than that position, therefore it's bad, right? You're undistributing middle sections of that, that logic. It works internally, but doesn't make sense in practice.
I think that maybe saying that you can't define bad technique, I think we should talk about that. Coming from powerlifting, for example, where movement matters so much, and one inch forward or 1 inch back can make the difference between a made or a missed lift. I think there's something to be said about maybe having a conversation about when you could deem something as bad technique, for what purpose. So while there's no clear connection or correlation between a particular style of lifting or technique and directly correlated to a particular injury, there's something to be said about refining and improving your movement efficiency for the purpose of maximizing your performance.
That's actually exactly what I've always said, especially in regard to one, or not one, in many, but there's one that stands out in my mind, one instance in particular, and it's when people will see someone squatting and you'll see someone have a mild butt wink, and people will ask, or they'll tell you it's bad, or they'll ask, is butt wink bad? And the answer that I've always said is, it depends what for. Is a mild butt wink going to break your back? Probably not. But
and we don't want to tell people that, right?
No.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like Steffi says, you should always learn the rules before you break the rules. But then also, it is bad if it's something that's causing loss of tension in the bottom of the squat, and it's affecting your power output.
Yeah, or you're dumping your chest forward or whatever.
Yeah. So it can be bad for other reasons than just it having the potential to injure you.
So again, I do think that correct form or technique or biomechanics, however you want to call it, matters at the extremes.
Yeah.
But like anything, you first need to learn the rules before you break the rules. You learn the construct and the rules essentially that are governing human movement, the basics, right? You'll learn how should an individual sit and stand, like what's the angle of the knee, what's the angles that the ankle can reach, what's the neutral spine position, right? But it's just like a basis or a platform or a base from which then you have to develop your coaching skills and understanding of what human movement looks like, right?
Yeah, and those are theoretical constructs. In practice, those are all ranges and individually applied.
Absolutely.
Right. So what that means is, and also most of it's self-organized. Like, you only need to tell most people to sit and stand. And then they get a basic sense of what squatting is. And then the acceptable range of movement variability, one, naturally, and two, probably should reduce as the load gets heavier, as the speed gets higher, right? Because that's when the costs are higher. But most people aren't anywhere close to that. So most people have a lot of wiggle room in terms of figuring it out, and actually excluding options from them might rob them of the opportunity to learn which options work best for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I think, coming from a background in Olympic weightlifting, that was something that I loved about the old school style of coaching, where not only was there not really any over analysis of the lifts, but it was just kind of like, hey, idiot, don't do this thing you're doing wrong. And you're like, oh, I have to figure out how to do it right. And you do your best attempt at that. And then your coach will say, still did it wrong, but this part was a little bit better. And they give you the opportunity to, like you said, figure it out for yourself and actually...
Or they just hit you with a dowel and don't say anything. And then
dude, my first coach used to hit us with a bamboo stick.
Yeah.
He used to call us hella chelab, which I'm pretty sure means piece of shit in Arabic.
Wow.
He'd be like, yalla hella chelab. Nail me with a stick. Shout out to Hani Kanema.
That's interesting that you bring Olympic weightlifting.
That's called knowledge of results feedback.
Knowledge of results feedback. Okay, so when you're trying to learn the snatch, essentially, all that you're told or all that you see is that the barbell starts from a static position on the ground, and then you're supposed to keep the bar close, make contact at the hip, bend your elbows, and then magically finish with the barbell overhead in a squat position, right? But if you see different lifters from different heights and different body types, different proportions, how they get from A to B, so from floor to overhead, varies so much, right? Like the basis of the movement, the initial construct and rules of the snatch are the same essentially for everyone, but the process is very different. Right? Like you might see an early arm bend to accommodate for someone who has a short torso and long arm span. You might see someone that starts really far in front of the bar because they have a long torso. You might see someone that starts behind the bar with their neck really hyperextended. And none of these things make the movement inherently wrong or increases the chance of injuries. And it's interesting because we don't have these types of conversations in Olympic weightlifting, right? Like when you see someone deviating from the norm, think of John North, how unconventional his movement patterns were.
The old arched angel.
Yeah, Tom Brady on a white horse protects you from injury.
But what I'm trying to get at is... for some reason, when it comes to squat, bench, and deadlift, people are so much more rigid with the way that they think that someone else should move, and than in other sports or even in Olympic weightlifting, to draw a clearer comparison.
Yeah, I think even in field sports, it's the contrast is even more exaggerated. And I think because field sport, the concept of developing skills in field sport is much more nuanced and sophisticated. Like, you don't instruct someone how to kick a soccer ball. You engineer small-sided games and playful environments and competitive representative structures to allow people to figure out how to kick a soccer ball.
You give them the opportunity to explore movement. Yeah. That's what it is, essentially.
But do you think that's the case because the risk versus reward is so much lower in kicking a soccer ball than doing something weighted in the gym with zero knowledge or experience?
I think that's because we assume people are more fragile than they are. Like when people are learning the lifts, the weights are so light. They're so far from their kind of tolerance that it should be equivalent to kicking a soccer ball in our minds. But
also it's kicking a soccer ball or pivoting in a field versus being under 200 pounds. Being under 200 pounds, the differences and nuances in movement are easier to spot than in a field. So it has to be an experienced eye, right? I'll take for example, say someone's pivoting, right? We know that during the first 20 degrees of knee flexion in a pivot, like during a transition or change of movement, that's when the ACL is more at risk for
and those peak moments are higher in cutting than in anything close to, in the gym.
Right, but again, what I'm trying to get at is biomechanics and form technique matters at the extremes. If you're a football player, you're cutting a lot. You're going from left to right, right to left. It does matter. Like, you do need someone that has a trained eye that can pick up those nuances and movement and figure out, okay, like your knee is caving at the first 20 degrees of flexion, your knee looks unstable, or you're wobbling too much, or you're not cutting as sharp as you should be. Then that's when I think refining movement is important, not only for performance but also for injury prevention.
Yeah, and one way I would challenge that is we can be confident that some people are more experienced than others at seeing movement, but is anyone really sensitive enough to pick up where that line is? And one, do we know where the line is? And two, there's so many emerging contributors that the line is so different for everyone that we just can't assimilate that kind of information.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we fail to predict injuries with any sort of likelihood, other than with big rock things like with workload. And even that's a hard thing to measure and to track. But at least that's been shown to be specific, as in people with high workloads tend not to get hurt as often as people with low workloads who have spikes in workload.
Right. But that doesn't mean that you can at least try, right?
Yeah.
Try to refine their movement, try to strengthen their muscles, try to coach them in traditional movement patterns, etc.
And I think that also goes into, we retroactively assign an explanation as to why something worked or didn't work without any evidence that explanation actually explains future occurrences.
What's that called?
Do you have an example of that?
We have post hoc fallacy, right?
Yeah,
I think I put that in the
fallacy.
notes. But that's an example of, you train someone to improve their technique. You don't really know if you actually improve their technique, or you might visibly see it, but you've actually just trained them a bunch. And there are other reasons why they might be more resilient, and you haven't considered those. Right? Which is why we need to challenge our assumptions.
Yes.
Because those models, one, might be wrong, or they might be unnecessarily complicated, or they might not be predictive at all. But we need to explain our experience in some way, just because that's how we make sense of all the noise in our environment. What we end up doing is we just put on blinders to all the information that actually might be relevant, or it might be imperceptible, and we need machines to filter it, or it might just be totally not predictive. My point is, we just can't assume we have an explanation for everything and then make predictions on that explanation, and then further entrench our ideas based on things that we're not seeing, right? We're ignorant of our ignorance.
Is there a way, or a best way, to read between the lines, sort of thing, in your opinion?
The hard part is, I think,
like how do we not get stuck in the scenario where we're just like, well, we don't have evidence, forget technique, everybody squat, let your knees touch together,
I think,
how do we not end up there?
There are other more plausible explanations that we have, and technique can be a part of it, but it can't be the whole thing, right?
Can we link a study on the comment section or whatever? I don't know how this podcast world works. Yeah,
we should have some show notes for this one.
Yeah, we'll have show notes. So I do want to link this study that the three of us read before this podcast by Greg Lehman, that talks in depth about this topic, and I think it's a valuable resource for anyone interested on this topic. So why don't we start by let's talk a little bit more about what you just brought up. So talking about the kinesio-pathological model. And what that means and what he challenges that with. So with the symptom modification.
Yeah. My point for that is, and it applies to anything with more than one possible contributor to an event, is we as people are very bad at imagining how multiple things can contribute to one event. We like to just ignore all the contributors except for what we think is the most likely one, and then all of the predictive ways assigned to that one contributor. So the idea is, if I say, well, technique might contribute a little bit, but also your preparedness, and also your stress level, and also,
fatigue,
some random variation that's totally stochastic, like it's totally just like literally someone throws a ball at you across the gym, just out of no, like so just random events. So there's some sort of randomness to make a prediction based on all those variables about whether or not someone will experience pain or an injury is just impossible for us to do because we don't have enough data, and we're not. That's not how humans think. We have prior experiences. We think about what's most relevant in terms of those prior experiences, and we assume the future will be like our prior experience. So that's how we make quick judgments using minimum viable information. The idea is, though, with complex things that are outside our immediate experience, like the experience of another person with things that are measurable to us, that's reliably wrong. That's why we have ideas and assumptions that are reliably wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why we reliably misremember things, and we reliably, see things. We see illusions, right? There's just our experience can so easily fool ourselves, which is why we think about things critically and why we test things assuming that it's not true until there's sufficient evidence that it might be true.
Yeah. It's interesting that at least for us, there was such a huge emphasis in physical therapy school on this type of thinking, this type of model, like kinesio-pathological approach. It's crazy, right? Because like what they teach us in school is they teach us several hundreds of special tests or provocative tests.
Yeah.
And the whole premise behind provocative test or special test is to try to isolate and identify a particular structure that might be contributing to an individual's pain experience. But I think that,
But there's an additional narrative behind that, right? You're isolating the painful or dysfunctional tissue or structure.
It's simplistic. Yeah, and it's flawed.
And we know with
that
the
way
shoulder,
of thinking is totally flawed.
Right? We know specifically with the shoulder the knee is also a good example, that they're almost all completely useless, except for maybe one or
How
two,
crazy.
which is slightly less than completely useless.
How crazy is that?
Right? And I mean, even imaging is almost again, we're talking in terms of averages because that's the only way you can test in terms of averages. Is for most people provides no additional information, right? So that inherently challenges the kinesiopathic model when your models no longer are predictive of any sort of experience or diagnostic criteria.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
you can't make a determination based on the test.
Yeah.
Which has a certain theoretical foundation that movement causes pain, or that movement damages structures which causes pain.
Yeah.
That logic is fundamentally broken.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't lead to a result.
Yes. So, I mean, how come we're still so behind on research in school? Like, I graduated last year, and there's...
Because they have to teach you something, right?
They should keep up with the literature.
Yeah, but what are they going to do? They're going to just say, hey, basically we know nothing. And when someone comes into the PT clinic, you say...
That's not we know nothing. They can say, hey, these are the tools I'm giving you. However... There's the kinesio-pathological model, and there's the symptom modification model, and there's this and this and that and the other, and give you the options and the chance to yourself critically think and adopt different ways of thinking depending on the situation that you're put in.
Yeah. But
instead of forcing us into thinking so rigidly and always forcing us to put a square peg in a circle hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm at the end of a chiropractic education. Same thing. And it's funny, in chiropractic education, it's very clear that there's just a minimum legal standard that needs to be held.
Right, you were talking about this with Jordan.
Yeah, you need to pass the boards.
Right.
And if you don't pass the boards, it's a problem for everyone.
It's a problem for them.
Yeah, and the boards
because that reflects on
exactly.
their ability to teach you stuff.
Yeah. So, and the boards change very slowly, and the boards need algorithms.
Right.
And the problem is we don't have good algorithms for people, because people can't make good algorithms for people. Machines can make good algorithms for people, but the algorithms machines make for people can't understand, because they involve thousands of data points and 30 layers. Right? We can't do 9-digit math right in our heads.
I thought it was interesting what you said, that the whole industry is set up to cause, basically to just cause as little harm as possible.
Yeah.
So instead of helping people or giving people multiple options like you're suggesting, right? Steph, whether you're saying like, they're forcing you to put a square peg in a round hole. You'd rather them give you all of these options and then you critically think to choose the best one.
Yeah.
The reason why they can't do that is because some people...
That puts too much faith in people.
Right. Some people are dumb and they're going to choose the wrong one in the wrong scenario and end up hurting somebody worse than if they just play that very careful game of maybe we're not going to help people, but we're definitely going to make sure we're not going to hurt people.
How about they just give us the research papers for us to read and then they don't say anything else? Like they just give us the resources that exist for best clinical practice. They don't say anything. You just maybe make it extracurricular reading and have students go at it if they want.
Yeah, I think some schools do that when the faculty are up to date on the research.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They should be.
Yeah.
Like the fact that my spine curriculum was so heavily outdated and misguiding, it's insane to me. Like my spine professor used to tell me not to deadlift, that I'm going to break my back. My spine professor. When he used to see me come in with my barbell, he'd be like, you got to stop doing that. You're going to break your back. You know?
Like, how's that for broken?
Only thing I'm breaking is world records, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I think it's also funny because where people start, I imagine the harm that personal trainers can do with almost no education is right. They miss red flags. I mean, they're unlikely to see red flags, but they'll miss them. They just have no context for the harm that they could be doing to people. Then you go to PT school or chiro school, you can create a ton of harm, but that's a different amount of harm. Anyway, you can. I don't want to get into it, but you know when to recognize, at least with a clinical degree, when something really bad might happen.
Yes.
And now you can make sure that happens as little as possible. But unless you're proactive about it and you take the initiative, you're still likely to tell people things and make people do things that could be harmful to them.
Yeah.
And and you're incentivized to create dependency that's harmful to them. Unless you're in an alternate healthcare model, like a capitated model or one of these integrated delivery services where you're actually incentivized to keep people healthy.
Yeah.
But most people operating fee for service, they want to charge as much service as they can. That inherently presents problems for people who don't already feel a sense of self-efficacy that they just want to get back to what they're doing. Most people may feel that way, but there's a subset of people who are just vulnerable to deception and to helplessness.
Most people are.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the numbers are. I think in our athletic world, most people are pretty capable and they feel capable, and some people might be vulnerable.
No, I don't know, because in the presence of a figure of authority, it's hard to ignore what they're telling you, right? Like you're more inclined to listen to what your chiropractor or physical therapist or physician assistant or primary care physician is telling you because they're talking to you from above, right? From a highly trained expertise or expert opinion.
You've chosen to go to them because you're deferring to their
but there's some things that might
opinion.
not compute. If they tell you not to deadlift, you're like, but I'm fine and I deadlift 500 pounds. That doesn't make sense to me. Right.
Sure.
Have you never met someone that's like, oh no, I stopped doing deadlifts because my doctor told me it's bad? You've never met that person?
Yeah, I've met that person, but they're generally not like super strong and active.
High level
already.
lifters?
Yeah, like I got the 700-pound deadlift and my doctor told me I shouldn't do it anymore, so I stopped. I mean that person probably exists.
Yeah. There's a high level lifter who was told to not deadlift for 18 months.
Well, I think that person's deadlifting again, but
yeah, he is deadlifting again.
So,
yeah,
I think, what I wanted to bring up with that is that there is a ton of harm people do just with their choices as figures of authority and as clinicians, and also the words they use and the narratives they give. Again, narrative is a common word we use now, but it's really the explanation you give that you really have no basis for.
Absolutely.
And that you can easily choose another one that is more empowering for the patient and for you, except it robs you of your authority a little bit, right? It puts the patient back as the hero of the story and not you.
You need to leave your ego outside the door.
Yeah.
Because currently the narrative that's being used, it's the presumption that you need to correct a particular movement to fit the ideal movement, and that the correction that you're giving them has a potential to eradicate or reduce their pain.
You're the movement expert. You deliver movement.
Yes.
And the chiro is the adjuster. They deliver the adjustment.
Yeah.
Sounds like a superhero.
Right. You fix. Right. You're the like I've really heard people say it really, turned me off. It was like, don't you want to be a hero? don't you want to fix people?
What's
like,
that?
No. Somebody at like a chiropractic conference.
That
said
should be our next shirt. It's just Cap, but like buffed out, and it just says the adjuster.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, that'd be so good. I'm pretty sure I know like 50 people who would buy it, who are all chiropractic students. Those would be the only 50 people. But
What else you got for us?
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about symptom modification and what it's good for. So let's talk about the spine to kind of simplify things a little bit. So, those two studies that are referenced in the study that we read by Mikhail and Iskra, or whatever her name is, the other person that wrote that article. So they mentioned that was it a case study? I don't know. They had a patient who was having pain during squatting.
I'm pretty sure it was a case study, yeah.
A case study, okay. So they had a patient who was having pain with squatting, and they identified that their pain was being caused by excessive lumbar flexion at the bottom of the squat. So essentially, they instructed this patient to reduce the amount of flexion of the lumbar spine, activate the lats more to provide more stability, and increase torso stiffness. That was kind of like their premise. And they essentially think about it as correcting their technique, right? We're going to fix your technique. We're going to change this and substitute it for that. And they view it as a kind of like a biomechanical correction. But what it really is they're modifying the symptoms to allow them to do the movement in a pain-free manner. Yeah.
And I think what we agree upon is that has the potential to improve, and also that has the potential to improve performance, has the attention to improve symptoms. It's like you're just creating more stiffness, right? And people will feel stronger with more stiffness for a number of reasons. But it comes with all this other baggage that people internalize. And that might have a short-term benefit because, my movement's being fixed. I expect relief from that. But long-term, the downstream effect of that is I can only move this way if I want to be pain-free.
Right.
And whenever I don't move this way,
I'm going to get hurt.
I'm doing damage.
Yeah.
Right? And if I feel any sort of hurt, right, I must be doing damage. So you've missed not only are you instilling limiting thoughts, but you've missed an opportunity to separate hurt from harm or pain from damage.
Yes,
which is what needs to be separated, especially in back pain, because back pain is one of the classic examples of pain is not predictive of any sort of tissue status in the spine.
Yeah, we essentially our aim should be to modify these symptoms in order to demonstrate to their patient that their pain is reducible and controllable. Like that's the bottom line for symptom modification. Empowering the patient to understand their pain, why they're feeling it, and break the link between movement and pain.
And one thing I got from Craig Liebenson was a positive experience with movement. Yeah. That's what you're trying to deliver instead of an adjustment. And the idea that movement makes it better. Right? Because a lot of people will say, it gets worse when I move. Or some people will say it gets better when I move, and then you just affirm that. Yeah. But some people think that moving is dangerous. Yeah. Right? So you need to show them that it's not, because in almost all cases it's not. Yeah. And then you can see that they have control over their symptoms because they can always move. Right. Right. And then motion is lotion. Right.
Motion is lotion.
I
like that.
Motion is
capacity.
lotion and lotion is motion. Essentially. Damn, we should start a skincare line.
Called motion. Just called motion.
Just called motion. I actually like it.
Motion lotion. Sounds a little dirty.
I have an interesting story about that. So, most people when they have a back injury, the first thing they want to do is get imaging. Yeah. Right? The first thing they want, because they want to see what's happening, what's wrong, what's broken, what needs to be fixed.
They want clarity. They want
clarity, and they want a one sentence answer. Yeah. You have a slip disc, you have a herniated disc, you have a broken facet.
Subluxation.
You have a subluxation, right? They're craving that like one sentence answer to kind of like blame all their issues and all of their pain on. But the reality is, like we said, that neither provocative tests nor diagnostic tests are accurate in identifying sources of pain, right?
Because there isn't one source of pain.
Because there's no one source of pain. And in fact, when it comes to low back injuries, we do see that the norm is to have something in your spine, right? Like there's what was the percentage in the study that we read? It was like 40 something percent of people in their 20s have some sort of disc herniation.
Asymptomatic
Assuming
you're
disc herniation.
asymptomatic, and it's sliding up to almost 100%
as you age. Yeah. So the norm is to as you age, as you get older, as you use your body, is that you'll have some sort of wear and tear. However, wear and tear is not directly correlated with pain. And that's something that we need to keep hammering. And where I was going with this was, I've been battling back pain for years now, about 3 years.
That's before you go, the one thing Greg Lehman always says that I love, when people say wear and tear or bone on bone or whatever, they're just wrinkles on the inside.
Yeah.
Right? You don't blame pain on your wrinkles.
No. It's normal. It's a normal part of being alive, and it's a normal part of being human.
Yeah, and it's more you use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And so if you stop, then that's when you're more likely
Things
to
get
experience
worse.
pain
Absolutely.
with things you're not used to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you should always continue moving.
Yeah,
but anyway, so I've been having back pain for on and off for about 3 years. And it used to be way worse, but because I know all these things about diagnostic tests and imaging, I was avoiding having x-rays and MRIs. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to face what was underneath my skin. I was kind of like almost expecting the worst. I was like, I'll probably go in, I'll get an MRI, and I'll likely have like all my discs are going to be herniated. They'll be gone. I'm going to be bone on bone on all my vertebrae. That's what I was kind of expecting, right?
Yeah.
And I avoided it.
Yeah.
And eventually it got to a point where I just wanted to know, just for my own records, what's the status of my spine? Like, am I okay to continue doing the activities that I'm doing, or is it time for me to stop and just not compromise my structures anymore because it's causing me pain? And finally decided to go in. This was a few months ago, actually. Go in and got an MRI and literally had nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah,
I had like a small bulging disc, but that like wasn't.
Yeah, so does everybody.
Which is like better than most
Better
people.
than most people.
Yeah.
Legit better than most people.
Yeah.
The status of my spine.
Yeah.
Nothing else. I had nothing else.
Yeah.
And that to me was so eye-opening, and it really did allow me to finally believe what I'm preaching and what I'm teaching.
Yeah.
As far as the pain experience goes and how it relates to low back pain, because I'm like, man, I've been having so much back pain, like so intense at some points, and I'm catastrophizing, I'm thinking the worst, I'm thinking that I have all these things in my spine, but actually I have nothing. And I told you, I'm like, go ahead.
And I think that's what blows most people's minds is right. In terms of diagnostic utility, you have sensitivity and specificity.
Yeah.
Sensitivity assumes you have the condition, which is pain.
Yeah.
How sensitive is the test doesn't mean how often does it correctly identify that you have pain.
Right.
People are like, oh, the image is crystal clear. It should show every time you have pain.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't in your case.
Yeah.
Like you would think it's more specific, or it'd be non-specific. Like there's a lot of reasons you could not experience pain, and why you'd not be in that group, and you could have a lot of asymptomatic stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like the fact that you had a clean-looking MRI and pain means it's not as sensitive as people think.
No, it's there's a study about that. It's like they did 18 people. They took a bunch of MRIs week after week for several months.
Yeah.
And I think they demonstrated that the MRI for diagnosing back pain was only 56% sensitive.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Terrible.
Which is basically
56%
chance.
sensitivity is terrible.
Yeah, which is and also not.
It's pretty much guesswork, man.
Yeah.
You have a 50-50 chance of getting it right or wrong. You have 56% chance of figuring.
And to get a better sense of its predictive value, you need specificity because there's a little bit of math involved with that. But it's basic because you don't know how many asymptomatic people there are, or people who don't have the condition. But in a group of people who have the condition, you're giving half of people a card that says you have back pain and half of people a card that says you don't have back pain.
Pretty much. Anyway, so for me, that experience led me to be more confident in what I'm saying, teaching, and researching, and confident in what I'm reading, and also just in the way that I interact with my pain. Like, for example, last week I had a flare up after a heavy deadlift session, and I think I was back in the gym the next day doing something, moving, walking, doing single arm rows, whatever. So I refuse to stop moving. I refuse to not go to the gym, and I refuse to view myself as a victim and as pain and as this back pain as something catastrophic or like the result of an actual injury. And today I was able to squat like 10 kilos less than 2 weeks ago. So it was pretty good.
And I think one thing that we've spoken about before is, right, since you know all these things, you're like, well, why can't I just do it? Like, why can't I just change my thoughts or like
Yeah.
conquer this
That's
like
the,
on
that's
my
the,
own through
that's the
force of
conversation
will?
we had. Like,
Yeah.
what is actually the purpose of pain science,
Yeah.
right? Understanding
Yeah.
pain if you're not in control of your subconscious emotions and thoughts.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. It's like this stuff isn't regulated at the conscious level.
Yeah.
It's built out of habit and experience.
Yes.
That our expectations and our sense of the world is not something that's consciously organized.
Yeah.
So we need to give ourselves experiences that change the predictive value of pain.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where we have positive experience movement. That's where we do graded exposure, where we kind of allow people to succeed against potential pain triggers.
Right.
That's why, and then gradually expose people to load,
Yeah.
where they can again, right, see progression and see that they are robust and actually build that over time.
Understanding. Go ahead.
Yeah. So but the foundation is understanding that pain isn't your identity or isn't
But
limiting
that's
you.
such a small part of
Yeah.
the big picture, right? Whereas we were talking about this, we feel like pain science has become, again, another fad.
Yeah.
People are calling themselves pain specialists right now just because they've read a few books on pain science, you know, or they've done a course or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But truth is, you're not going to be able to influence someone's thoughts or perceptions around pain just by telling them, hey, pain comes from your head, it's a perception.
Yeah.
There's
It's
a
like
result
telling
of-
someone
it's-
to stop being depressed when they're depressed.
Right, like you
But
can't.
they don't know what they're talking about when they say pain is in your head, because it's not in your head.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
We have a whole conversation about that.
Yeah.
But because you
Anyway.
can't have pain without a body, and you can't have pain without a brain. So to say it's in one place, or the other makes no sense. You also
Yeah.
can't have pain without a sense of your environment or a sense of how you navigate your world.
Yeah.
Right, a sense of meaning in the world.
Well, let's keep pain science
Yeah,
lecture for
but-
another time. But go ahead.
Yeah, but
Yeah, don't send them down that rabbit hole.
but my point
Yeah.
was
It
It'll be
pain
a
science.
4-hour podcast.
If you just pain science someone and then say I'm done, we have good evidence to suggest that does almost nothing, right? Pain science is where you start. It's not where you end.
Exactly.
So that means you actually have to then deliver some sort of path to return to activity, or to return to load in our case.
So what if you had to?
That's the cap shut up alarm. It's coming from my computer.
I thought we were gonna have to shut down the podcast. I thought we set up a fire alarm or something. So
yeah, that's the
that's
end
what-
of pain, man. Move on to the next topic. I'm bored.
no, hey, we got to give these people some takeaways.
Okay, fine. No, wait. No, I'm saying let's leave the pain science topic alone.
There's no-
Oh
end.
yeah.
Pain has
so
no end.
so on the topic that we're discussing, if we were to read through the lines or between the lines and give the listeners something or a few points on this topic, what's important for people to know? How can they apply it to their actual lives?
Does biomechanics matter? The
Does it
answer
matter?
is it depends.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
A
more
little
than
bit,
others.
sometimes more than others. In my opinion, you should always learn the rules and and learn the basis of human movement and of the movement that you're trying to teach someone or that you're trying to do. And then from there, another point. If there's someone, hold on, before I continue with the summary, I wanted to touch on something else. If there's someone that's moving in a slightly different way, but that they've been moving that way forever, is it safe to change their movement patterns?
It might
Or-
be dangerous to change their movement patterns.
Yes. So that's where I wanted
Yeah.
to go to. So you should always stick to the mechanics that you've been training with, because those are the movements and the positions that you've built resilience in. That's something really important. Like
Yeah.
I see coaches, people that have been training for 3-5 years, and they come in to a seminar or whatever, and the person that's teaching the seminar is trying to change their movement, whatever, bring your feet in, point your toes out, keep your chest up, whatever.
You're a Chinese weightlifter now.
Yeah,
But
and
you're 6'5" and have really long arms.
and that makes no sense. So you always have to try to optimize within the framework. You don't have to change the entire movement to fit your
Yeah.
narrative of what correct movement or correct technique looks like.
And you can have a biomechanics discussion. You just don't need to make it the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, it's just another tool
Yeah.
again. So yeah, okay. So learn the basis, learn the governing movement pattern that you're trying to teach. What's next?
I think the idea that
Stick to the mechanics that you're training
yeah,
with.
I think the idea is always to consider what you could be missing, and that there's multiple contributors to any sort of
yeah,
event,
yeah,
and also to reach any sort of outcome. There's a lot of things to consider, and
Yeah.
then when you try to understand why something happened a certain way, always think about what you could be missing, and always think of things in terms of all of the possible contributors
yeah,
to manipulate, and which ones are controllable and which ones are not.
yeah.
So the idea is if you have someone who you shouldn't necessarily change their technique, what can you modify to improve their performance or reduce their injury risk?
Right.
Because you're always in control of multiple things.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you change one thing, you change a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So you always need to think in those terms.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And also, okay, and when else does biomechanics matter? We said at the extremes. So in times of high stress, terms of fatigue, in times of fatigue, in terms of
High performance demands.
force application. Yeah, you're attempting a max attempt, squat, deadlift, whatever. It's not about doing the perfect technique, but it's about sticking to the technique that you train with, right? You shouldn't let fatigue or stress sway you outside of the form that you train in.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah,
Mistakes are part of that process.
absolutely. And just because they deviate slightly from a particular technique doesn't mean that they're going to get hurt either. So that's the T. That's the takeaway
That's not
for
the
today.
T, but I'll tell you the
We're
real
going to get into
T.
the T right now.
We're going to get to the T. So we've been talking a lot about squat. So why don't we kick off this fitness gossip session with one of the most controversial squats in recent history. I think we touched on this lightly in... Seriously, someone take that soundboard away from her.
It's great.
I'm kidding, I like it.
We're entering the fitness gossip portion of the podcast. Oh, God, did you do it here? What? What do you say? What?
That was a pretty suggestive
That was pretty good, no?
soundbite. All right, so last time we spoke about how we thought Andrew Herbert, offered to forfeit his record. You guys remember that? Were you here for that?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it.
Okay, so apparently that whole thing was misinterpreted.
How do you mislead people into thinking that you forfeit your record?
I'm glad you asked, Ian. So
I'm confused.
Well, that's not
Us
what I was
Barbell
supposed to do.
made a post of Herbie's squat, and someone asked, this record was forfeited, correct? And Herbie himself actually responded to this and said, no, in the video I clearly say that if the powers that be were considering throwing out all of the lifts from the meet, then go ahead and throw mine out, but don't do it to everybody else. A lot of the reposts misinterpreted this for some reason, and I didn't have the heart or energy to go around correcting every post and every comment. So I think it's still safe to say that he's good guy Herbie. And that's, despite what you may think about the squat itself, he was sort of throwing himself out there as the shield of being like, because he's such a nice and likable guy that nobody really ever attacks him.
Yeah.
So he was sort of saying, if you're going to take everybody else's, or you're trying not to count everybody else's lifts, then take mine away too.
Yeah.
Which, it's still a good guy move, but it's definitely not as epic as
Saying I don't want my squat.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been epic.
If the meet doesn't exist anymore, why don't they just take away? What's the process of taking away the lift?
Well, so the meet is not going to happen again.
Yeah.
This meet still
but
happened and
but
counted.
The meet has no incentive to preserve its reputation if it doesn't exist anymore.
But there's still people behind that meet who are, responsible for throwing that meet. And if everybody, 5 people break world records, and all of a sudden they're like, let's throw out all of the competition results.
Yeah.
Those 5 people might be a little bit upset.
Yeah, I guess.
That their mark in history was just removed.
Yeah.
But it's a tricky subject because there's 2 sides to it. The one side is you're never going to be in a position to tell as well as the judges who are there in person. I think in a lot of instances that's true. But there are some lifts that are blatantly shouldn't be passed. And I think, unfortunately, this might have been one of them, despite how much
there should be a secondary review process for world records.
That's what we were saying. We're saying they should do it like in the IPF. They have, they don't have instant replay. Olympic weightlifting is going to in 2020, which is really cool.
What?
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
I'm going to have instant replay at the Kratos.
That would be cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But Olympic weightlifting
Especially
is going
for
to
prime
have it.
time.
There's like a hood, and you go. The judge goes into the hood and does the instant replay.
What?
Like they used to have a challenge system.
What
where
sport? Do
someone
they do
could-
that in a sport?
Wait, football.
I have no idea what
Oh,
you're
they
talking about.
actually go under a...
Yeah, you throw.
In
Coach
my
throws-
country, we call football soccer.
Yeah, lesson on American football.
Football,
I realize I'm the only
bonito,
American here.
you know what I'm saying?
So, in American football, in this country, when a coach disagrees with the call, they throw some laundry, a red flag. They throw it absurdly high for no reason. The ref sees that red flag and then reviews the play. When they review the play, probably most of the audience will know exactly what I'm talking about. They go to the nearest television camera. They go under the...
Why does it have to be
hood.
so secret?
I don't know, but they're playing the footage on the big screen in the stadium, and they're playing it on TV, and then the commentators are deciding.
So it's just maybe
It's
so
just
he's not distracted?
the ref has to see everything, and also there's other people giving him input because there's other television. He's seeing all the television angles that the producers are giving him, and in the NBA there's a whole secondary facility that's monitoring calls. That's like in New Jersey somewhere on every game, but there's a whole process. It's also theater now. So the ref comes out from underneath the hood and then makes the call, and then decides whether to reverse it or not.
I see.
Right, and penalizes the coach if he doesn't reverse it.
Well, we could use a little bit of that. in
I think it
powerlifting.
adds theater to it.
Yeah, I
the
like
coach
it.
can just go out and just throw a flag, and then
I like that.
Your opponent can throw a flag. That'd be cool.
yeah.
I like that. Yeah,
Alright.
dramatical.
kinda-
What other two do we have?
That leads me into the next thing, which we sort of alluded to, which is Slingshot record breakers is no more. Jesse Burdick, who is the meet director, said that he's not going to be holding this meet anymore, and his official statement that he put out says that there's a lot of noise regarding record breakers. The truth of the situation is that the meet became more of a problem than it was worth. With all the good things it was responsible for, it brought an equal amount of negativity.
That's unfortunate.
That's someone drinking a tea.
So, yeah, you know what though? I don't think we're seeing the end of Jesse Burdick as a meet director.
No.
I think that there was just a lot of controversy surrounding the record breaker's name, and there's been a couple years in a row where it got a lot of heat. Some legitimate, some stuff that I didn't agree with, but I think probably they're gonna. If I had to guess, I think they're gonna rebrand it just to, disassociate the negativity that comes along with the name, and maybe do
I
another
don't think
one.
that's even necessary. In my opinion, it's remedial, or you can fix that. Just have lifters lift to a higher standard next time, and that's it. Brush it off. Who cares about what people are saying, really? If their lifts are legitimate and you wholeheartedly believe they're legitimate, then you should feel okay with the results of the meet. You know what I mean? And if not, what I would have done personally would have been a public apology saying, hey, you guys are heard. I hear you. Maybe the judges weren't as prepared. We didn't make the best calls. In the future, however, I'm personally going to judge the meet, and I'm only going to bring international directors to the meet.
Sure.
And that's it.
Sure.
I think
it
wasn't terminal, I didn't think.
From all the stuff that I saw, it definitely seemed like the main reason for it was because of all the controversy around it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're obviously not seeing the whole picture, and maybe there's other reasons as well,
Yeah.
which I think some people had alluded to in comments on different posts and stuff.
Yeah.
But I hope he comes back with
Yeah.
another meet.
Okay, what else we got?
I did that meet and loved it.
Me too, several times. McGregor's fighting again.
Yeah. Wow. The long anticipated return of the champ.
Yeah, the second return of the champ.
The second return.
Yeah, he retired once, got back, retired again, got back.
No, he
It's the
didn't.
second.
Did he?
second.
Yeah, this is the second.
What?
He's retired
I think he
twice.
just was just waiting it out for a good opponent before,
But
but
he said he retired. What are you talking about? Literally, he tweeted about it.
yeah, I think and he's been out since.
Yeah, what I'm saying is he's returning for the second time. This was his second retirement.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I'll,
We'll fact check
We'll
and get
fact
back
check
to
that.
you next week with
But
the
I don't think so.
with the
But
answer.
I did call who his fight was going to be against.
That's a person sipping tea.
I don't think the sound effects work as well if you explain them after every single one. But yeah, he's fighting Cowboy Cerrone, which I don't know. A lot of people are kind of bummed about. They think that it's going to be an easy win for McGregor, and I don't think that's going to be the case. Cerrone has like 5 UFC records. One of them being most fight bonuses. So like different ones like knockout of the night, fight of the night. He's a bunch of those.
How much do you think McGregor's going to pay him to purposefully lose?
Oh, no chance, man.
Nah, those
McGregor's confident.
Yeah.
But he also has the most wins in UFC history, which is like Cerrone does. Yeah, he's been around forever. He's super experienced.
How old is he? You know? I don't know. That's going to be a sick fight. I would love to watch it.
It's a good one because I feel like they use Cerrone as sort of like a test for a lot of fighters. If they can hold their own against him, then they'll give him bigger opportunities. And it's still a dangerous one for McGregor because if he doesn't come prepared,
what are you going to say?
He retired twice. He did? Oh.
Loser.
Damn.
It's the unretirement.
Damn. All right, fair enough. My bad. There was other UFC gossip, kind of sad. Not really gossip, but news. That fighter, UFC heavyweight Walt Harris, his daughter was abducted and they just found her. She was killed. And that's a little heavy, but it's crazy. It's like you I don't know, for some reason you feel like it does, like those sort of things don't happen to celebrities and to, people who are super exposed in public like that, but
that's so sad.
It's crazy. I think he asked cops to not arrest the people so he could just kick their ass.
But they still arrested them.
That's not legal.
It's pretty gangster, but yeah, they can't do that, unfortunately.
I would love for that to happen.
Since we're on a bit of a fight kick, this one's one that crosses over from fighting and strength sports. And I thought this was insane. I thought this was a joke when I heard about it, but this literally actually just happened. And it's, if anyone knows Fedor Emelianenko, his brother, Alexander Emelianenko, who's a world-class fighter, recently, I think, was released from prison in Russia, just fought Misha Koklyaev.
That's insane, dude.
From a gulag, not just prison.
From what?
Russian prison is a gulag.
Is that what's Siberian? Is that more intense?
Siberian citadel.
Yeah.
If you ever watched what's the movie with Ed Harris, Jim Sturgis? They literally walk from a prison camp in Russia to India for their freedom. They spent 4 years walking. I think it's like the long way back or way back. Someone in the audience will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's what I imagine in Russian prison. They're work camps in the middle of the winter and they freeze to death.
Well,
and the only way they can escape is by escaping into the winter.
That'll turn you into a man real quick. But yeah, Misha Koklyaev is maybe one of the most accomplished strength athletes of all time. He was at one time he was world class in strongman, powerlifting, and Olympic weightlifting, which is just insane. Ridiculous. He was one of my favorite strength athletes ever because he was kind of the first one.
To do both power and weightlifting?
Well, he was one of the first, he was maybe the only person to ever be world class in all three of those things, but also one of the first people to be online just like doing crazy feats of strength for likes and views and all that awesome stuff. I remember seeing a video of him like way back. I mean, I was probably in high school just doing no hand squats with 290 kilos and other crazy stuff like that.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so he fought Alexander Emelianenko and obviously lost, which is kind of sad. I would have liked to see him win, but what can you expect? It's like McGregor going and fighting, Floyd Mayweather in boxing. It's like, of course he's going to lose.
Happened.
Which, yeah. But I mean, anyone who was surprised at the outcome of that fight. Oh my God.
That's the worst cry. Also, the movie.
You know what this one's called? Cartoon monster crying with pathetic and sad moans.
That's very specific.
Oh my God.
I love it.
Ridiculous.
Okay, that's it for the fitness gossip.
No, we got one more.
What is it?
The U.S. Open roster just came out.
Oh, yeah.
It's not gossip, really. I mean, some of these are questionable in the gossip category,
okay.
But notable names on the female side. Got Laura Scrow coming from Australia in the 132s. There's no 123 signed up, which I thought was interesting because that was kind of the main show for the girls last year. Who else we got here? Maureen, she's a good lifter out of Canada.
Yeah.
Chloe Van Wyck probably has a pretty good chance at winning it this year.
Yeah.
No Cece, no Mariana, no Steffi Cohen. Those are 3 big hits to the roster. What else we got?
How about on the guy's side?
Sarah Schiff is lifting. Hey, she might. I mean, if she has a really good day, she might give Chloe a run for her money.
Yeah.
She's got a crazy deadlift on her, that's for sure. On the guy's side, let's see. Ross Petkov in the 181s. Cody Blazek in the 181s also. That's a pretty good showdown between those 2 guys. Who else we got? Chad Penson in the 198s. Yuri Belkin, obviously, 142s. I hope someone can give him a run for his money, because as awesome as he is, seeing him pull our PEA just to win and take the money,
Nuts.
it's not the best show. I actually like seeing him have to work hard and struggle at big dogs, and push himself. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that.
Same.
And Daniel Bell. First time on the big. Oh no, he did big dogs a while ago, but that's cool that he's going to be in the at the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He might be one of my new favorite lifters.
Same.
Yeah, that's the U.S. Open roster.
That's a T.
It's a T. Not a lot of like big social media influence people. No Larry Wheels, Kevin Oakes, but I don't know. It'll probably still be a good show. It's always decent.
So what do you got, C?
You got a Florida man story? There's always a Florida man story.
I have one too.
So, Paul Flart, a legend, has been fired from the hospital he works at in Florida for logging his sonically perfect farts on Instagram.
His name is Paul Flart?
Paul Flart. He doesn't want to disclose his last name, so that's his Instagram handle.
Oh.
For 6 months, he farted through his shifts at the hospital, posting them on his Instagram, growing a following of 100,000 Instagram followers.
100,000?
That's so
Farting?
annoying.
Of just farting.
That guy has the same amount of followers as me, and all he does is fart.
Where did this guy
So
work
what's
at in
wrong
the
this whole
hospital?
time?
Security guard.
Security guard, and he got fired for that?
Yeah.
Why?
Fame, of
Because you
course,
can't
is
just be
free.
goofing off, farting into your phone your
Why?
whole shift. You're supposed to be protecting people. You're
I mean-
security.
He's a mall cop,
One
though.
small fart didn't kill no,
No,
one.
wait, a mall cop. Wasn't you say hospital?
Hospital.
Oh, hospital cop, sorry.
Come on, that's kind of serious.
I wouldn't fire him.
Really?
I would promote
Steph,
that guy.
If anyone just came, if someone walked in here right now and farted, you'd fire
Promote
them.
that guy to
Bro,
run
what
your
if they're-
social media
What if
account.
they're farting on their phone in the bathroom? Like, that's 100% legal.
Well,
He was in the
it's legal to fire him for
What?
any
He's in the
reason.
lobby.
In the lobby? How do you know? There's proof
There's all over his Instagram.
that he was farting in the lobby?
In the lobby because he said that it was sonically
I want to look it up. Hold on. Paul farts?
No, you hire him to
He's-
run your
Paul
hospital.
Fart?
Flart.
Paul Flart.
The hospital social media definitely doesn't have 100,000 followers.
Oh, yeah.
So the hospital
Wait,
is
Paul
to
Fart.
promote
He's
him.
verified?
Yeah.
The Fart Authority. That is insane. Let's hear.
Wait.
That's
Wow.
that's really good.
Wow, is that his face, Steph? Oh, that looks like a guy who'd do that.
That one was lame.
That's talent, though.
Oh, please. Okay, all right.
One more. This one looks good.
Oh, that's so good.
Wow. That's a talent, man. Like, I'm going to get this via follow. No, I'm not.
Don't encourage that.
That was really good. Okay, I have another Florida
We
man
need to
story
get him
to
on the
wrap up the
podcast.
episode. Invite him to a podcast and make him fart live.
And he live streamed him getting fired. So
He is a genius.
Maybe this guy was just intentionally transitioning from hospital security staff to clout lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He's gonna sell fart shirts.
To social media influencer.
Paul
That's
Flart
crazy.
shirts
Good
and all
one,
that.
C. Crush that one, man. All right, here we have another Florida man story coming right at you. Man dies in explosion after attempting to microwave a microwave.
What?
I mean, it's sad that he died.
Well,
R.I.P.
Is it
Wait,
really?
wait.
But
He might,
Okay,
how
so
do you
here's the tea.
It was a
Hold
miniature
on.
microwave or a giant one, and you put a regular size microwave in it.
Bro,
Yeah, the relative sizes of the microwaves are very
let me
important.
talk.
How big can you get a microwave?
bro, let me talk. Here's the tea. Okay, you ready for it? 26-year-old Bill Davis died yesterday after attempting to microwave a microwave. He was in a video call with his friends, and since they were bored, they dared him to microwave a smaller microwave, and he did. I didn't really think he was going to do it. He is, or was, one of our craziest friends who would do anything
was.
just to make us laugh. He had a big and a small microwave at home, said Vanessa, one of Davis's friends. He put one into the other and plugged in the biggest one, and then it started, she concluded. He turned it on for 4 minutes and 20 seconds. We all laughed
420. Oh my! This guy was so
at
high.
that moment. Yeah, he was blazing. But we stopped laughing when he heard the explosion and the video call stopped. After hearing the explosion, they called the police and found that Davis was dead and his chicken was burned.
Did it seriously sign off with "and his chicken was burned"?
Yeah.
That is.
He did it to make us
disrespectful.
laugh. We will never forget about
Oh,
him,
no.
said Vanessa in tears. Please don't do this at home, kids.
Oh man. Well, R.I.P. But
R.I.P.
I kind of feel
Bill
like
Davis.
he had it coming.
Yeah.
If
What
it
if
wasn't
he-
that he was one of the
Bro,
craziest
why-
What if he
friends.
turned the smaller microwave on? He would be alive. If he
Dude.
only if he tried to microwave
Hey.
the small one inside of a big one.
No, but you're not really microwaving microwave.
Yeah, but I mean, that assumes a.
Wait, he turned both on?
No, he tried to microwave the smaller one. He
Yeah.
actually tried to microwave it. But if you're that dumb, you might have well just tried to microwave the small one by turning on the small one and not the big one.
I mean, hey,
Oh,
he'd
just
be
to-
Then
alive.
he would be alive.
Yeah, but hey, question. Why do you have a big and a small one? Microwave?
Yeah, the big
only
one
need
can do
one
all the
microwave.
jobs. You don't need a smaller one.
Is there a small? I've never seen a small microwave.
I got a pretty small one in my house.
How big?
It's like
Bite sized.
this big.
Oh, really?
Wow,
Where
yeah,
do you
you-
have
hey,
that?
you could fit that in
Definitely-
ours.
just came with the apartment. It could definitely fit in the one we have in the office.
Really?
We should
Wow.
try it.
Dude, that's so weird that you have a small microwave.
That's where
pretty
you get out of the
fucking
story. That's where you get out of the
Well, he
stories.
didn't buy it. No one buys a small microwave.
It just
It came with a house. I would have thrown that in the trash the first day. Who has a small microwave?
I like how the
That's
takeaway
insane.
from the story is we should try to microwave a small microwave.
No, seriously, don't microwave a microwave. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. This was episode 3 of Hybrid Unlimited. I was your host, Steffi Cohen.
Hey, you keep saying host. Co-host.
No, I'm the host and you're the co-host.
That's not how that works.
It's
Stay
your
in your
host.
lane.
Have you, ever,
Assistant to the host.
have you ever seen the thing with Crystalia when he's talking about the pilots, the co-hosts and the co-host? He's like, technically we're both co-hosts, but he just said his name first.
That's for you. No, that was the joke about the pilot and the co-pilot.
Yeah.
Oh, and
So
then he did
technically
the
we're both
co-host.
co-pilots. You know. It's-
Yeah, what's a co-pilot
'cause that's
for in
what-
an airplane?
Right. I always thought the co-pilot was like
for
some
navigation,
other,
but now the electronics navigate.
but
Right,
they're
so
both
then you-
pilots. They're
Yeah,
both
but
just
one does a
pilots.
different job than the other one.
What does
Are
he
you
do?
sure?
Nothing. He sits down there waiting for the
No.
other one to die, which has never happened.
No, it's he's
Well,
not like napping and
they
waiting.
have charts and stuff, and they take out the charts and they prepare certain things for the pilot. They have a role. They manage some of the equipment. There used to be like 4
But-
people in there, and like in old
But
jets.
that co-pilot might be the main pilot on another
Caesar,
flight.
Caesar.
What?
I'm gonna be. Let Caesar be the judge here. Caesar, what sounds better? All right, this was Hybrid Unlimited. I'm your host Steffi Cohen, and I'm your co-host Hayden. Or that was the episode of Hybrid Unlimited. I'm your co-host Steffi Cohen, and I'm your co-host Hayden Bow. That sounds dumb.
It's pretty redundant.
Yeah, so I'm gonna keep
But you
saying
gotta
it like
split it down
that.
the middle.
Huh?
But you gotta split it down
Wait,
the
you-
middle.
what
I'm
about
not
Why can't there
solos?
just be 2 hosts?
Yeah.
It's not 2 co-guests.
Dude, that's so annoying. Whatever, dude. Do whatever. I know.
Yeah.
Why are we obsessed with the co?
Yeah, who's on the logo? Your host.
Oh man, fine.
Thanks.
I'm
Let
gonna
me
start- I'm
have
gonna
that.
start
Let me
my
have
own
this
one.
one.
Let's start a
Okay, you start
petition.
your own one. Let's see
Hybrid
who,
even less limited.
Hybrid limited. And mine is unlimited. You know, you understand what I'm saying? It's limited to you only. Let's see
Also
how that
remember,
goes.
leave a review. Rate 5 stars.
Oh yeah.
That's
Subscribe if you're listening.
If you liked it, if you didn't like it, just leave us a 5-star
Yeah,
review
still leave a
anyway.
5-star
Thanks. And we'll catch you next time in
All right.
episode 4 of Hybrid
No,
Unlimited.
that's not how the podcast ends. All right, that was it for episode 3 of Hybrid Unlimited. I'm your host, Steffi Cohen.
I'm actually your host, and this
And
is
I
the
work-
end of Hybrid Unlimited.
And I work here.
Thank you guys for listening, and catch you guys next time.
I'm your host.
Thank you.
I like how the post production is literally just holding microphones up to computers.